loneliness, the same emptiness. He's not getting much out of it, but now we see in chapter 2, he's going to look in several different places. So look there if you would. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 1 says this. I said in mine heart, go to now. I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter is mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold of folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under heaven all the days of their life. Stop there just for a moment. He's talking about a few things that he's really seeking to dig his teeth into, and really he begins with hedonism, which is kind of the mindset of the world today, isn't it? The world is after what will please me, what will bring me pleasure. He said in verse 1, therefore I will enjoy pleasure. So when you look at the world today, when you look at most people today, that is what they're after. They live for the weekend, they live for whatever will please them, that will bring them pleasure, will please the flesh. And so that's what Solomon did. And he did it with everything he had. He said in verse 2, I said of laughter, it is mad. And of mirth, what doeth it? So he tried to please himself with just doing things that would make him laugh, or things that would be enjoyable to him. And he said it did nothing for him. Verse 3, I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under heaven all the days of their life. So he was a lover of wine, so he went after wine, and he tried to drink wine to the point where he was just, enjoying life there. And he said, that didn't satisfy him. And again, we find that in our world today. People are just imbibing with wine constantly, alcohol, whatever that will do, because that seems like that will give me pleasure. When in reality, it's just a band-aid for the emptiness of their life for a brief time. And when the wine wears off, you got to go back to work again to pay for the wine for the next weekend. It's just a never-ending cycle, because it never, ever satisfies them. So he said in verse number 3, he acquainted himself with wisdom, the end of verse 3, and to lay hold on folly, till they might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under heaven all the days of their life. Verse 4, I made me great works. I builded me houses. Notice, wouldn't you like to build a house? He built houses, as many as he wanted. He had all the money in the world. He could build whatever. So he built houses. He planted vineyards. He made gardens and orchards, and I planted trees in them of all kinds of fruit. I made me pools of water to water therewith the wood that bringeth forth trees. So again, possessions. He had as many things as he could have, houses. Again, he could just go to Amazon and Google whatever he wanted, and boom, there it was. He didn't have to worry about whether it was going to cost him too much, because he had all the money that he could ever want. And he did that. He had all the stuff, bought all the things. Anything he wanted. He didn't withhold it from his heart. And yet he said, it didn't give me satisfaction. He built orchards, pools of water to water the orchards with. Verse 7, I got men servants and maid servants, and had servants born in my house. Also I had great possessions of great and small cattle, above all that were in Jerusalem before me. The opulence that he had is just beyond our comprehension. We just can't fathom it. I don't know that we can really relate him to anybody today, because there are certain, billionaires in our world. You think of, Bill Gates and, Tim Cook and some others, Jeff Bezos. We know some billionaires, but again, Solomon would have stood above and beyond anybody in his day. He wasn't like in a class with like 1% of the population. He was just in a class by himself, and he knew it, and he had wisdom beyond anybody else. And yet he had all of that, and he said, but I just can't figure out how to be satisfied and how to be pleased in my life. It's like chasing after the wind. I just can't grasp it. I don't know what the problem is, as he goes on. Verse number 8, So I gathered me silver and gold and the peculiar treasure of the kings and of the provinces. I got men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men, that musical instruments, and that of all sorts. Imagine, he didn't just turn on the radio. He's like, who's the greatest singer in the world right now? And he said, bring him to my house and we'll sing. I mean, can you imagine that your favorite musical artist, that you didn't just listen to their latest, music, but you actually brought them to your house and they performed a concert for you whenever you wanted. That would have been amazing. And that's what he did. And after the concert, he's like, that just didn't do it either. I don't know what I'm missing. And this is how most people in our world are living. They just don't know what I'm missing. Here's the great thing. We know what they're missing, right? But sometimes I'm missing that too. Sometimes you're missing that too. We struggle with satisfaction. We'll go on. He talks about it. Verse number 9. So I was great and increased more than all they that were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Whatsoever my eye desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion of all my labor. Then I looked at all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. So again, empty. He just said this was just foolishness. It was empty. Why have all this money? Why have all these possessions if none of this brings me complete joy and satisfaction in my life? And again, he's struggling to find it. And he's a believer, but he's not living his life for God, which we know that's the end result. That's the problem. He's not living his life for God. God is not his satisfaction, because that's the only thing this world will ever bring satisfaction to us, is when the relationship with God is right. Is that's when we can have satisfaction. Whether you're rich or poor, wise or not, it doesn't matter, as long as we have that decent relationship with Jesus Christ. We know we're saved and we're walking in fellowship with him. Is it more enjoyable if you have that, and you have a house here and a house at the beach and a house in Florida? That may be a little nicer, right? But satisfaction doesn't come in the possessions. Satisfaction comes in a relationship with Jesus Christ. So he goes on, verse 12. He compares the wise and the foolish in the next section. So he said, I turn myself to behold wisdom and madness and folly. So I wanted to dig into this. What's the difference between somebody that's wise or somebody that's foolish? For what can the man that doeth that cometh after the king? Even that which is done even that which hath been already done. Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as far as the light excelleth darkness. So what did he say there? He said, I searched after wisdom and foolishness. I looked at that. I compared the two. And what did he say? Wisdom is better. Wisdom is better than being a fool. He didn't have to study that. We should know that, right? That's kind of given. But then he's going to turn the tables on himself a little bit. Verse 13, I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as far as light excelleth darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceived also that the one event happeneth to them all, which is death, right? So then he's wondering, okay, so I can live my life being wise, or I can live my life being a fool. And if I'm wise, then I'm going to make better decisions in this world. I'm going to make better decisions in life. And life will probably go a little bit better for me. And the fool, and we can watch fools all the time in this world that just really don't care about other people. They only care about themselves, and they just mess up all the time. And they're just foolish. They just do foolish things, one after another. But Solomon says, but then I stopped and realized that we're all going to die. So what does it matter if we are foolish or if we're wise? Verse number 15. I'm sorry, verse 16. For there is no remembrance of the wise man more than the fool forever. Seeing that which now is in the days to come shall all be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man? As the fool. again, a lot of foolish people are in the grave, just like a lot of wise people. And think about the wisest person that lived 100 years ago. Like, I don't know who that was. That's his point. We don't remember who it is. Like, he's gone, and once he dies, somebody else takes over, and somebody else takes over, and they're forgotten. You know, he's like, so what does it matter? Why would I even bother being, like, is this just a foolish thing for me to just spend my life being wise? Why not be a fool? Verse 17. Therefore, I hated life. I want to ask you if you've ever said that. But we probably all said that at some time, haven't we? I hate life. Like, this is foolish. Why are we in this world if it seems like fools get away with everything? And those who are trying to be wise, those who try to play by the rules, those who try to do what is right, they tend to get the short end of the stick. Why bother? I hated life. Can you think of anybody else who hated life? Well, Moses. Remember, he hated life. Job. He hated his life. Elijah. He begged God to take his life. What about Jonah? He just said, throw me in. I'm done. I hate life so much. I hate what God is doing. I hate how God is allowing this to happen. I'm out. I quit. I just hate life. This is foolish. This is stupid. I don't even want to be here anymore. And he's the wisest man on the planet. So if you've ever felt that way, you're in good company. Because a lot of us have. I hated life because the work that is wrought under the sun is grievous unto me. And guess what? All is vanity and vexation of spirit. Now, I don't think Solomon is saying, you need to feel sorry for me. Because I've got like 15 houses and I'm still not happy. Who's going to feel sorry for that, right? Like, I'm not feeling sorry for you. You got 15 houses, Solomon. I don't care, you know? He's not trying to get us to feel sorry for himself or for him. He's trying to help us understand that when we live our lives trying to please flesh with all kinds of stuff and we leave God out of the mix, that can't satisfy us. In fact, none of that stuff, if you're the wealthiest man in the world, it can't satisfy you. The only thing that can fill that empty hole in our heart is a deep, intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. And Solomon will find that, but he found it much later in life. He thought, oh, I can be saved, I can have a relationship with God, but that can be part of my life, kind of like we talked about Sunday, but the rest of my life is mine. I'm going to please my flesh, but I still am going to hold on to God. When in reality, he's going to help us understand, no, my life has to be all about God. And whatever else happens around that, that's okay. But God's not a part of my life. He needs to be the center of my life. So again, before he fully understood that, he didn't like what God was doing. He didn't understand what God was doing. He said, I hate life. I just don't like life. And because we live in a sin-cursed world, life isn't that pleasurable. Verse 18. He says this, the next section. He's going to compare and contrast hard work and laziness. Yea, I hated all my labor which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. And who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Yet shall he have rule over all my labor, wherein I have labored, and wherein I have showed myself wise under the sun. This is also vanity. So Solomon was a hard worker. Now, he had all the money he wanted, but he worked hard. And he was, he's just brilliant. He was, he was a decent human being, and he tried to be productive in society, tried to be a good king. He wasn't the greatest king, but he was doing his best as far as he could see. And he looked at all that he was doing, and he said, this hard work is good, but what if I work hard, I save up, I have all of this to give to my son? What if my son's a fool and he wasted all? Then why did I spend, all of my days working hard to save up if I'm going to give it to somebody, and that somebody might be a fool and waste it? And here's the sad thing. His son did. Rehoboam, who took over, he was just a total mess. He was one of the most foolish kings they had. And he just blew it. And Israel was divided because of his foolishness. And so exactly what he was afraid of is exactly what happened to him. And I know all of us are concerned about, leaving our millions of dollars to our, right? Solomon had millions and millions of dollars, That may not be where we're struggling. Like, I'm going to leave my inheritance to somebody else. But what Solomon could have and should have left, not necessarily money, was he should have left his son some spiritual wisdom. But unfortunately, in his early days, he wasn't that concerned about spiritual things. As he's getting older and in the end of his life, he's saying, I need to put life in perspective, and he's getting his mind back in order, but here he's struggling with some of these things. So he says, I don't understand life. I hate it. I can serve, and all of a sudden I'm going to leave everything to somebody, and that person may be a fool. We'll look at another verse here in just a minute. But let's go there now, otherwise we may not get back to it. Luke, hold your place here. We'll come right back. Luke 12. Go to Luke 12. There's a parable here that Jesus talks about in Luke 12. Then in verse number 13, it says this, and one of the company said unto him, Master, speak unto my brother. Did he divide the inheritance with me? He said unto him, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of the covetousness. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain man brought forth plentifully, and he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do? Because I have no room wherewith to bestow my fruits. And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns, and I will build greater, and there I will bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods, laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat and drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich toward God. So there is the problem. The problem was not in wealth. The problem was this man was rich in possessions, but he was not rich toward God. And so that's what Jesus tells us, and that's what the book of Ecclesiastes is pointing us toward. That it doesn't matter, what your IQ is. It doesn't matter, what your bank book says. It matters whether you're rich toward God. Because if you're rich toward God, you have everything. But if you have everything and not God, you have nothing. And so that's where Solomon was trying to get to. Verse number 24. Okay, verse 20, back in Ecclesiastes 3. We're up further than 20. Then I went about to cause my heart to despair of all the labor which I took unto the sun. For there is a man whose labor is in wisdom, and in knowledge and in equity. Yet to a man that hath not labored therein, he shall leave it for his possession, for his portion. This also is thy name, the great evil. For what hath man of all the labor of the vexation of his heart, wherein he hath labored under the sun? For all his days are sorrows, and his travail grief. Yea, his heart taketh not rest in the night. This is also vanity. There's nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy the good of his labor. This also I saw, it was from the hand of God. So in verse 24, there's a little shift there, there's a little change. And so he says this, there's nothing better for us to eat and drink and really enjoy the things that God has given to us. So what I think he's trying to tell us is not eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, which is the mindset of the world. I think what he's saying is, I need to seek to enjoy the things of life that God has given me. And if it's somebody like Solomon that has 15 houses, well, enjoy it. God gave that to him. We shouldn't look down on him because he has a lot of money. That's wonderful. That's what he has. Let him enjoy it. Whatever God has given to you, be content with what God has given you and enjoy it, and seek to enjoy life while you're serving God, pleasing God, seeking to make him first in your life. And God has given us things to enjoy in this life. Remember, we're to be content with what we have and not look at what others have and say, well, if I had what they had, then I'd be happy. Well, probably not, because possessions, things never make us happy. So if I'm content in my walk with God, then I should be content no matter what is going on around me. And that's, I think, the focus here. Verse 25, for who can eat or who else can hasten thereunto more than I? For God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he giveth travail, to gather, to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. This also is vanity and vexation of spirit. So God says there's going to come a time when God's going to take away that which the evil man has. And they're going to be judged. And one day we will spend eternity with God, and that will be a blessing. But this world, this life, yeah, there are days we just hate life. We hate what life is doing to us. We hate what is going on around us. And I think Solomon is trying to push us back to that walk with God, because that's the only thing that will satisfy us. 2 other verses, and then we'll close out this chapter. Go to James 1. James 1. Here James encourages us in a similar vein that we see here with Solomon. James 1, verse number 17 says this: every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. So God is the one who gives good gifts. So if it's good in my life, then it came from God. If it's not good, then it didn't come from God. So he reminds us that if it's good, then God only gives us good gifts. And then over in 1 Timothy chapter 1, another one that Paul writes to Timothy here, 1 Timothy chapter 6. First Timothy 6, verse number 17. Charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy. So God wants us to eat and drink and be happy. But that's not the focus of life. The focus of life is what? Ecclesiastes 12:10. Let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. And while I'm doing that, I can understand that as long as my relationship with Christ is right, and I'm fearing him and seeking to please him, even though life doesn't turn out the way I'd like it to sometimes, I should enjoy the good days that God gives me. And when they're not great days, I need to just continue to rest in the confidence of who God is. But life is never going to turn out, for the Christian or the non-Christian, it's never going to be just a cakewalk. Life is hard, life is difficult. And God wants us to enjoy what we can. But in all things, he wants to make sure that we are focusing on our relationship with Jesus Christ. Don't get caught up in some poor theology that would say, well, if I'm living for God, then shouldn't everything turn out right? That's never going to happen this side of heaven. The other side, yes. But this side of heaven, life is hard. Life is difficult. And yes, there are days we can enjoy, we can have, fun and laughter, and there are days that there's sadness and crying. But in all of it, center our lives around Jesus Christ. Fear God and keep his commandments. All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you tonight. Thank you so much for your love for us, for this book. And Lord, some of it is a little more difficult to understand and see what you're doing there. But Lord, we thank you that you want to teach us, again, that main principle at the end of the book, that we can fear you and keep your commandments. We thank you for it. In Jesus' name. Amen.